guys, we are back for chapter 8 of Book Scavenger. What happened at the end of chapter 7? It was a doozy. The two bad guys that mugged Mr. Griswold were chasing Emily, Matthew, and James, looking for the book, The Gold Bug, that Emily had just taken from the trash. So let's see what happens next with this book. All right, chapter 8. Emily wanted to look up the gold bug on the Book Scavenger website, and because there was almost always someone on the Crane's computer and James had his own, they left Matthew at the front porch and went up to James's apartment. With every step up James's staircase, the smells of spices and roasting meat grew stronger. It had been a long time since Emily had been in a friend's house. She thought of James's grandmother and her scolding tone. She started to feel anxious that she would do or say the wrong thing. She followed James's lead when they reached his entry landing, sliding off her shoes like him and adding them to the row that lined the wall. Voices speaking Chinese came up from the front room, and when Emily peered in, she saw that they were from a flat-screen TV perched on a cabinet. An elderly Chinese woman, dwarfed by the floral armchair she sat in, was fixated on the screen. Every so often, she'd flap her hands and say something too quiet for Emily to hear over the TV noise, like she was carrying on a one-sided conversation. "Hi, Typo." James crossed the room and gave the woman a sideways hug. "My great-grandmother," he explained to Emily. "She lives over on Pacific with my auntie, but Saturdays she usually comes here because my cousins have weekend tournaments and stuff. You know how that is." James tossed those sentences out so casually, totally unaware of how such simple statements could make Emily's head spin. First of all, what tournaments? She assumed he meant some kind of sport or maybe chess, but no, she didn't know how those could be. Moving so often, organized sports and school clubs weren't really something she did. Her free time activities were sightseeing with her parents, reading, puzzles, and Book Scavenger. And then there were all the people. James mentioned in one sentence, a great-grandmother, auntie, cousins, all right here, nearby? Like he saw them all the time? Emily saw her grandmother who lived in Vermont maybe once a year, and the rest of her grandparents had passed away. She had an uncle who was in Europe, at least she thought that's where he was. He and her dad weren't super close, and her mom had a sister she talked to often with on the phone, but it had been years since they saw her. There was a clatter from the kitchen at the other end of the apartment. Emily turned to look down the hall and saw another woman pop her head out of the doorway. "You're back," she said. "Hey, Mom." James walked down the hallway to hand over the 2 bags he'd brought back from the farmer's market. "Did you guys eat? The kitchen's a disaster zone, so don't come too close, but I can get you something. We're in the middle of prep work for that anniversary dinner we're catering tonight." James's mom had long, glossy black hair and wore hoop earrings that rocked like swings when she talked. "We're good," James said, looking to Emily for affirmation. "Emily's going to show me the Book Scavenger website." "Oh, Emily, I haven't even introduced myself. I'm so sorry. I'm James's mom. I'd shake a hand, but..." She waved her flour-coated hands. "How are you liking San Francisco?" "It's nice." She had to raise her voice to be heard over the roar of a stove fan that had been switched on in the kitchen. Something sputtered as it dropped in hot oil. From inside the kitchen, they heard James's grandmother shout something over the oil and fan. James's mom held up her palms and shrugged, like she was saying, "What can you do?" and ducked back into the kitchen. It was a little overwhelming how different James's apartment felt from Emily's, which was nearly identical in layout, but nothing else. The Crane's rentals were always furnished with the basics, and that was it, stark and bland. James's apartment was layered with objects and smells and noises. There were rugs and couches and decorative pillows, tables with fabric draped over them, and then frames and trinkets on the top of the fabric, real plants that you had to take care of. The walls were painted colors, not rental white, and covered with art, photographs, and a collection of paper fans. Some things looked brand new, like the flat-screen TV, and some things looked like they'd belonged in a museum. James said his family had been living in this building for generations, and you could feel it. James's room was no different from the rest of the house, filled to the brim, blue walls covered with superhero and comic book posters, a solar system slowly revolving from the ceiling, a stuffed boa constrictor stretched across the foot of his bed, multiple bookshelves with not just books but collections, neat and orderly Lego models, toy monsters, a tower of board games, sand dollars. Emily and Matthew were limited to 1 suitcase of non-essentials and 1 suitcase of books. Emily couldn't even calculate how many suitcases it would take for all of James's things. Emily pushed back a curtain concealing a closet filled with a desk and computers. "You've got to be kidding me," Emily said. I never kid about computers. James patted each one on the top like obedient puppies. One computer for schoolwork and regular stuff, one for video games, and the third, I built this one. You built a computer? It's not really a big deal, James said with a shrug. So how do we see if that Goldbug book is part of the Book Scavenger game? They went to the Book Scavenger website and Emily clicked on Embarcadero BART station. There were no books listed under hidden. She did a search for the Goldbug, but nothing turned up in the results. Maybe somebody really did throw it away and missed the trash can, James said. Who would throw this away? Emily asked. And the book was entirely too special looking. A hardback bound in linen cloth the color of a pomegranate, a gold beetle embossed in the front with flecks that sparkled when you tilted the book. It opened stiffly as if she was the first to do so. Nobody would dump a book like this. Emily flipped to the copyright page. The only thing on it was a small drawing of a blackbird in front of a bridge and ocean waves, and a short string of numbers. The drawing gave her an itchy brain feeling, like she dreamed about finding this book or had seen that symbol before. Maybe someone hid it so recently he or she hadn't had time to register it online, or maybe he or she even forgot. She clicked on the forum and posted a message. She typed, I found a copy of The Goldbug by Edgar Allan Poe in San Francisco BART station. Did anyone hide it and forget to register it? Please, pretty please say yes because I need the points. She didn't really need the points, but she was only 15 points away from advancing to Miss Marple level to August Dupin, and she'd been counting on getting those 2 points by finding the Tom Sawyer book today. After posting her message to the forum, Emily gave James a tour of the Book Scavenger site, updating her profile information so it listed San Francisco as her city and Booker Middle School for school/work. What about that card you found? James said. At the ferry building? What did you call that guy? A poacher? Can we find out anything about him? Emily pulled the card from her backpack and typed Babbage into the user search. She clicked on the profile and was surprised to see that Babbage ranked Sherlock Holmes level, the highest possible level. That rat, he didn't even need those points. Selfish poacher, Emily muttered. Points don't matter when you're at the top level, James asked. Well, you can still use them at the Book Scavenger and Bayside Press stores. And some people are just competitive and want to see how high they can get their point total. It would take her a long while to get to Sherlock Holmes level, but once Emily did, she'd probably be one of those competitive people. Has Babbage declared any books? James asked. Maybe we could beat him to one of the books he's hunting. Emily clicked on Babbage's profile to look at his hidden books, but was stopped by another discovery. Brooker Middle School, James read. He goes to our school? Or she, Emily said. Knowing Babbage was a middle schooler just like them made her all the more irritated that he or she had poached Tom Sawyer. Can't we see their picture? There isn't one uploaded. Babbage used a generic avatar, just like Emily. She scanned Babbage's book listings. The user hadn't declared any titles, but he or she had hidden several recently. When you hit a book and uploaded the clue, you selected a detective category to give other users an idea of how tricky it might be to find your hidden book. Babbage had rated all of his or her clues at Sherlock level, so they were almost definitely beyond Emily's cipher cracking capabilities. The computer dinged and an instant message box popped up. Raven, can I be of service? Who asks I can be of service, James said. Is Raven a butler or something? Emily shrugged. Beats me. Surly Wombat says, service with what? Raven, you inquired about the Goldbug. Oh, Emily straightened. That was fast. Raven knows about the book. See, I knew it was a Book Scavenger book. Surly Wombat, did you hide it in the BART station? Raven, I cannot reveal the locations. The location's been revealed, you weirdo, Emily said. How else would I know about it? Surly Wombat, I already know the location. I found the Goldbug in the BART station. I'm trying to get credit for it. Raven, The Goldbug is a short story by Edgar Allan Poe, originally published in 1843. Poe won a short story contest, and the prize was publication in a local paper. It was a popular story in its day and brought attention to cryptograms and secret writing. What's with the history lesson? James said. Emily sighed. I don't think Raven actually hid this book. She's probably one of those know-it-alls who likes to flaunt every fact in her head. Yippee for you, you know a lot about Edgar Allan Poe. Emily closed the instant message box with a sharp click of the mouse. Let's see if there's anything new about Mr. Griswold in the hospital, Emily said. In the forums, there weren't any news updates, but Emily did see a thread under the Garrison Griswold category titled, What If? A user from South Carolina had posted, "Don't want to be a downer, but I just had a sad thought. What happens to Book Scavenger if Mr. G doesn't make it?" Emily breathed in sharply. She had been worried about Mr. Griswold and what it meant that he was in critical care, but it never crossed her mind that something happening to him could mean something happening to Book Scavenger too. She skimmed the posted reactions, finding an assortment of replies. Most people were positive about the future of both Mr. Griswold and Book Scavenger, but one user's reply might have been bold-faced the way it jumped out. "A friend of a friend works at Bayside Press, and let's just say it's been love, not money, keeping Book Scavenger up and running. And that was all before this went down with Big G. I want to be bright and clear and cheery about what the future holds, but I'm thinking we should get our book hunting kicks in now while we still can. Hope I'm wrong." A world without Book Scavenger? 6 years ago, she didn't know anything different, but now it was such a huge part of her life. Without Book Scavenger, Emily wouldn't be able to follow a book's journey, see who found it and where it traveled to next, read the adventure logs that other sleuths posted, trade reviews after they read the book. Reading would be lonely without Book Scavenger. Moving again would be unbearable without Book Scavenger. "Well, looks like nothing changed with Mr. Griswold," James said, breaking up her thoughts. "We talked about making up a secret language. Want to do that now?" Emily blinked at James a few times, like she couldn't quite get her eyes to focus. "Right," she finally said. "Looks like nothing's changed." Emily glanced at the forum message once more before closing the browser window. And that is the end of chapter 8. Kind of a sad end to that chapter, but the rest was good. So we still don't know. Well, we know where the book is from, but Emily still doesn't know where the book is from, so kind of fun to be one step ahead of the characters. All right, I will see you guys next time for chapter 9. Bye!